Okay, this is the overview for the unit that we will talk about involving cells. So we already know that all organisms are made of cells, but also the cell is very important because it actually represents the simplest collection of matter that we can consider to be alive. And so it actually fits the definition of life. And we also know that cell structure is correlated to cellular function depending on what it is. We can also trace cells back to their ancestors, and in turn, we can look at descendants from different types of cells to figure out where they came from. Now, eukaryotic cells have internal membranes that are very specific and actually separate the organelles that are inside of them. And so the reason that we separate different types of cells is based on their function. So all organisms have one of two types of cells. They're either prokaryotic or they're eukaryotic. Now, these types of cells are underneath of the umbrella or domain of bacteria and archaea, which are all consisting of prokaryotic cells, or eukaryotic, which consists of the protists, the fungi, the animals, and plants. Basic features of all cells, so this doesn't matter, it doesn't matter whether it's prokaryotic or eukaryotic. These would be, you would answer these questions in terms of if you were asked, what are the basic features of any type of cell? So all cells have a plasma membrane. They have a semi-fluid substance, kind of like a jelly, called cytosol, and that's what the organelles are in of the eukaryotic cells. They have chromosomes of some sort that carry the genes, and they also both have ribosomes. And ribosomes are very important because that's what allows those cells to make proteins and in turn express that. Now, prokaryotic cells, which again are the bacteria and the archaea, they're very small and they have no nucleus, and their DNA is in something that we call a nucleoid, which just means it doesn't have any binding on it, it's just kind of hanging out in the cell. There's no membrane-bound organelles like there are in the eukaryotes, and there is cytoplasm, but it's bound by a plasma membrane because we already know that all cells, regardless of being prokaryotic or eukaryotic, have to have a plasma membrane. They also have ribosomes in it, although it's not highlighted, but we already know that all cells have. Okay, so here's a picture of it, and you can see that there can be flagella or cilia or fimbriae. This just means this would be something to help move it around. So as you know, with bacteria, they live on your skin, they live in your gut, they have to be able to move around. So that's really, it could be cilia, but it doesn't have to contain flagella and cilia. It can contain anything to help it move around. There's some sort of capsule. You can see like some types of prokaryotes have a cell wall, some don't, but they all contain that plasma membrane, that ribosome. So you can see the picture in the middle here on the left of the purple nucleoid, which is the DNA region, and this just happens to be a rod-shaped. Now, eukaryotic cells, we know that they have DNA as well, but they also contain a nucleus, and this nucleus is what collects, or the house that this DNA is actually in. These membrane-bound organelles are kind of like, you can think of a eukaryotic cell like a city, and so the different houses and schools and things and the power plants, if you will, are the organelles, and there's cytoplasm in between the region that holds everything in place. And they're usually prokaryotic cells. Now, why would we highlight the plasma membrane? The plasma membrane is a selective barrier, and the reason why this is important is this is kind of like your door of your house. It allows things to go in and out of the cell. And basically, not to get too deep into the plasma membrane, but the structure of a plasma membrane is like a double layer of phospholipids. And so phospholipids are lipids or fats that contain. So a eukaryotic cell, we already know that it has these internal membranes, it has organelles, and so plant and animal cells are for the most part pretty similar. There are some distinct differences, but for the most part they're similar. So here's a picture of an animal cell, and you can see that the nucleus is in purple, and you can see inside of the nucleus it has the envelope, the nucleolus, and the chromatin. So rough ER, which we consider to be the endoplasmic reticulum, and we'll get into the function later. You can see the Golgi apparatus, ribosomes, there's the mitochondria, microvilli, that again, those aren't necessarily on all animal cells. There might be microvilli, there might be a flagella, there might be both, there might be nothing to help the cell move around. It just depends on what it's for. And then there's some sort of cytoskeleton components to it. This one's highlighting microfilaments, intermediate filaments, and microtubules. Again, we'll talk more later about the actual function of these different. And here is another image that actually is kind of highlighting the animal cell in a little bit of a different way. And so this is more of a cross-section versus a planar view. And so you can see the microvilli at the top, and then you can see the cytosol. And it's basically the same exact structures as before, but it's kind of showing you a depth perspective versus a planar perspective. And so we know that these cells, and really any type of cell, is not 2D, it's more 3D and 4D. Okay, so this picture here, these images are just to give you an idea about what they would look like in reality. So you can see that on the lining of the uterus, you have human cells here, and you can see that it's highlighting the nucleus and the nucleolus, which are housed there in purple for you. And then you can see the shape of the cell is kind of columnar. So you can't see in a cross-section all the different types of organelles. You would have to stain them or do something to them to actually be able to see them. Fungi are also considered eukaryotic cells, so you can see that they do look different. And if you were to highlight a single cell under a different type of microscopy, it would look different to the eye. So most cells you cannot see with the naked eye. You can see tissues, but you can't see the individual cells, and so you use different types of microscopy to actually look at or observe the different parts and pieces of the cell that you're trying. And so here we have an example of a plant cell. So you'll see that not many of the features are different. The ones that stand out are the central vacuole. So plant cells have a large central vacuole in the middle. Animal cells do not. They also contain, if it's a green plant, they would contain chloroplasts. So those are the little discs right there that look green. And they also have, the other big difference between plant and animal cells is that they have a cell wall, and that cell wall helps give them their shape versus animal cells that are more kind of squishy looking. But otherwise, the other organelles that are in there are pretty similar for the most part, and we'll talk more about their structure and function. And lastly, we have a picture here of some plant cells. So you can see that they do look different than the animal cells. You can see that the chloroplast, usually in plant cells when you're looking at them under the microscope, most people can identify the chloroplast really well because they're green. A lot of times they take over the majority of the space in a cell or the volume of a cell, and you can't see the nucleus or the nucleolus. And so these are actually cells from the duckweed. On the other hand, protists, which have characteristics of kind of both plant and animal, so you can see in the picture there that cleminotum actually has kind of a round egg-like appearance, but it also has the flagella. So on the outside, it kind of looks like an animal cell, but it has a cell wall, and it also has chloroplast making it green, so it is indeed a protist cell, and it doesn't really fit in the category of plant or animal. So it really depends on, in terms of what the cell actually looks like, the structures in the cell, depends on what you're looking at, a protist cell versus a plant cell versus an animal cell, or whether you're looking at something that's prokaryotic, which would be completely different and be very, very small in comparison to a eukaryotic cell. So again, we'll talk more about structure and function in the next series.